Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to really take a deep dive into a fascinating period of history, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake.
Yeah, a really impactful event.
Oh, absolutely. And for this deep dive, we'll be looking at a podcast episode that features an interview with Peter Harlop. He's a culture critic at the San Francisco Chronicle.
And he really knows his stuff when it comes to San Francisco history.
He really does, yeah. So we're not just going to focus on the destruction, which is, obviously a huge part of the story.
Right.
But we're going to look at how the city rebuilt and how people showed incredible resilience and a real sense of community.
There are some incredible stories about innovation and just the spirit of San Francisco coming through.
Imagine for a second, you wake up in San Francisco, April 18th, 1906, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the city is just in ruins. I mean, just total devastation. The San Francisco Chronicle, where Hartlop works now, their headquarters were completely
It
destroyed.
was a brand new building, too.
Yeah.
One of the tallest in the city at that time.
Wow, yeah, I can't even imagine. And the journalists who worked there, they couldn't even find their editor or a place to develop their photos. Total chaos.
Yeah, but they were still committed to getting the news out to the public.
It's amazing, isn't it? They tracked down a printing press across the bay in Oakland at the Oakland Tribune.
The Tribune actually shared their resources, which is just amazing. It allowed the Chronicle and some other San Francisco publications to put out a joint newspaper.
That's such a cool example of collaboration in the face of a crisis.
Yeah, and that joint edition, the one they printed the day after the earthquake, it's really a fascinating historical document. It's got all these different fonts and styles because of how it was put together, but it really captures the experience of the people who lived through it.
So what did the coverage look like in those early days?
Well, there were no sports, no arts and entertainment, just this stark headline: Earthquake and Fire, San Francisco in Ruins.
Wow, that must have been just chilling to read while surrounded by, by all the destruction. It gives me chills just thinking about it. So the initial focus was on just getting the basic facts out.
Exactly. It was about providing vital information to a public that was just terrified and completely confused.
Makes sense. What was the situation like in terms of leadership and the overall response?
Well, the fire chief had been fatally injured, and no one knew where the mayor was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there was a real lack of leadership early on. Reporters described scenes of despair and destruction. One even wrote about seeing a woman who was injured at a hospital. She was convinced she'd lost everything and was trying to jump out of a window.
That's heartbreaking. It really paints a picture of just how desperate things were.
It really does.
But even in the face of all this, people started to come together and support each other.
Yeah, they found refuge wherever they could. Golden Gate Park, the Presidio, even gathering around the U.S. Mint, thinking its walls would protect them.
Wow, that's interesting. And what about aid from outside San Francisco?
Well, a lot of support came from other parts of California, especially Los Angeles.
That's great to hear. They sent supplies, money, even skilled workers.
Yeah, they really recognized that San Francisco's recovery was, something that everyone had a stake in.
Right. A shared responsibility.
Exactly.
So 5 days after the earthquake, the Chronicle published what they called their comeback edition. I love that.
Yeah, and this was the first paper they printed back in San Francisco, which was a real turning point.
What was the tone of that edition?
Well, it wasn't just about reporting the news, it was about instilling hope. The Chronicle's editorial boldly stated, "No discouragement in the city, just perfect confidence and enthusiasm for the creation of a new and more glorious San Francisco."
Wow, that's powerful, especially considering everything they'd just gone through. It's like they chose to focus on what they could build rather than dwell on what they'd lost.
And they backed up those words with action. The Chronicle started publishing stories of resilience and triumph, like babies born amidst the chaos, businesses reopening.
That's incredible.
It was all about highlighting the positive, the signs of hope.
Yeah, I can see how that would have been really important for morale.
Absolutely.
Now, Hartlop mentions a few individuals who really stood out during the rebuilding. One of them was Raphael Weil, a department store owner.
Oh, yeah, he was an amazing guy. He was 70 years old at the time, and he dedicated himself completely to rebuilding the city.
Wow, 70 years old.
Yep, and he famously said, "I have enough left to buy an annuity and live like a fighting cock for the rest of my days, but none of that for me. I'm going to work on rebuilding with all my soul."
That's incredible. He could have retired comfortably, but he chose to dedicate his time and resources to helping his city.
He really did. He turned his department store into a hub for distributing aid and used his profits to help those in need.
That's a true testament to his character. Now, there's another story that I found really fascinating. The Miracle on Russian Hill.
Oh, yes, that's a great one. It's about a group of residents on Green Street who somehow saved their homes from the fire.
It's almost unbelievable when you think about how widespread the fire was.
I know, right? But they used everything they could find, bathtubs, boilers, anything to put out spot fires. And get this, they actually convinced the military not to dynamite their homes.
Wait, they were going to dynamite their homes?
Yeah, that was standard procedure at the time to try and stop the fire from spreading.
Wow, I had no idea. So how did they convince them not to?
Apparently, they offered them wine.
Really? Wine?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they must have been pretty persuasive.
I bet. And those houses are still standing today, which is just incredible.
It's a testament to, well, to their ingenuity and just their refusal to give up.
You know, these individual stories, when you put them all together, it's like it reveals something so profound about human nature.
Right. This drive to survive, to rebuild, to find hope even in the darkest of times, it's really inspiring.
It is. And it wasn't just about rebuilding what was lost. It was about reimagining what San Francisco could be.
Exactly. The earthquake, as tragic as it was, it became a catalyst for innovation and this bold new vision for the city.
And that's where we start to see the real legacy of the 1906 earthquake.
Yeah. It forced them to confront their vulnerabilities, rethink their priorities, and ultimately create a city that was not only more beautiful, but also more resilient.
Okay, so now let's talk about the immediate challenge, which was providing shelter for all the people who'd lost their homes. Thousands of people were suddenly homeless. What did they do?
Well, one of the most interesting solutions was these earthquake shacks. They were small, prefabricated houses built from lumber that was donated by Washington and Oregon.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were simple but sturdy, and they provided temporary housing for a lot of displaced residents.
So they were kind of like emergency shelters.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. A lot of these shacks ended up becoming permanent homes.
Really?
Yeah. People would load them onto horse-drawn trailers and move them to new neighborhoods.
I guess when you've lost everything, you got to be adaptable.
Right. And some of their shacks are still standing today, over a century later.
Wow, they're like little pieces of history scattered throughout the city. So they really are a symbol of San Francisco's resilience.
They really are. And they show how people can turn challenges into opportunities. They took something that was meant to be temporary and made it into something lasting.
I love that.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that not everyone's experience of rebuilding was the same. San Francisco's Chinatown, for example, faced some unique challenges.
Yeah, they had already been dealing with a lot of racism and prejudice before the earthquake.
That's right. And when Chinatown was destroyed, there was a real fear that they wouldn't be allowed to return.
Yeah, some people saw it as an opportunity to push the Chinese community out of valuable downtown real estate.
That's awful.
But Chinatown's leaders, they weren't going to let that happen. They came up with this clever strategy to secure their right to rebuild.
What did they do?
Well, they basically argued that displacing Chinatown would hurt the city's economy and disrupt the lives of a lot of prominent citizens who relied on Chinese labor.
Smart.
Yeah, it was a really tactical move. And it worked.
That's so great to hear. So they were able to rebuild.
They were. And they did it in a way that really celebrated their culture. They chose to incorporate this really ornate architecture with pagodas and dragons and things like that.
I can see that. It's so visually stunning.
It was a deliberate choice to create a destination that would attract visitors and hopefully foster greater acceptance.
What a powerful statement. It's a testament to their resilience, but also to their vision for the future of Chinatown.
Exactly. They didn't just want to survive, they wanted to thrive.
Now, there's another individual I want to talk about, someone who really exemplifies courage and quick thinking. Alice Eastwood. She was a botanist at the California Academy of Sciences.
Oh, yeah, Alice Eastwood. She's a legend.
Tell me about her.
Well, as the fire was approaching the Academy building, she risked her life to save over 1,000 plant specimens from their collection.
Wow.
That's amazing, right? She wanted to make sure that all that invaluable research wouldn't be lost.
Talk about dedication. I read that the Academy's director, on the other hand, only managed to save 2 sparrows before fleeing the building.
Yeah. I guess different people have different priorities in a crisis.
I guess so. But Alice Eastwood, she's a real hero. She saved an entire collection of knowledge.
Absolutely. Her actions really highlight the contributions of women in science and their dedication to knowledge, even in the face of danger.
And those specimens formed the foundation of the Academy's collection when it was rebuilt. It's like a piece of the old Academy lived on through her efforts.
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it, that even amidst all the destruction, something was preserved, something was saved.
It is. And I think that brings us to the heart of what makes the 1906 San Francisco earthquake so compelling, even all these years later. It's not just about the devastation, it's about the stories of resilience, of innovation, of community.
It's about the human spirit, the ability to find hope even in the darkest of times.
And those stories, they have the power to inspire us, to teach us valuable lessons about how to face our own challenges, both individually and as a society.
And that's something we're going to explore further when we come back.
Absolutely. So stay with us, because we've got a lot more to unpack in this amazing story of resilience and reimagination.
You know, it's amazing how quickly San Francisco got back on its feet after the earthquake. I mean, basic services were restored so fast.
Yeah, like the lights were back on in a matter of days, and the streetcars back up and running pretty soon after that.
Think about that. The city was still in ruins, buildings were rubble, and yet they got those essential services going again. Just incredible.
It really shows how determined they were to get back to some sense of normalcy.
Absolutely. A real refusal to let the disaster just, cripple them.
Of course, one of the biggest challenges was housing. So many people had lost their homes. Where do you even begin to address a crisis of that scale?
Well, we talked about those earthquake shacks, right? But those were just one part of it. Businesses, hotels, even department stores, they were all rebuilding, and often they were creating structures that were even grander than what was there before.
It's almost like they saw the earthquake as an opportunity, a chance not just to rebuild, but to make the city even better.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The 1906 earthquake, it actually became this catalyst for architectural innovation. It's when we start to see the beginnings of that iconic San Francisco skyline.
It wasn't just about aesthetics, though, right?
Oh, definitely not. They were incorporating all the lessons they learned from the earthquake, new technologies, construction methods, all aimed at making the city safer and more resilient.
So they knew another earthquake was possible and wanted to be better prepared.
Exactly. Things like reinforced concrete and steel framing, those became the standard after the earthquake.
So they were forced to confront their vulnerabilities, and it actually pushed them to build back stronger.
Exactly. And that resilience, that wasn't just limited to physical structures, It was about the whole spirit of San Francisco, the culture, the people, that sense of vibrancy.
And I think that's perfectly captured in the story of Chinatown.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Facing all that racism, the threat of being displaced, and they just refused to give up.
Refused to be pushed aside. They fought hard for the right to rebuild. And then they took that opportunity to create a Chinatown that wasn't just functional, it was beautiful, a real celebration of their culture.
It's really inspiring. They could have easily given up, but they had this vision for their community, and they made it happen.
It really emphasizes how, even within this larger story of San Francisco's resilience, you have these individual stories that are just as powerful. Rebuilding Chinatown, it wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about preserving a way of life.
Yeah, and about showing everyone that they belong there, that they were a vital part of the city.
Exactly. All these individual stories, they come together to create this incredibly complex and beautiful picture of San Francisco's response to the earthquake. It really was about so much more than just the physical rebuilding. It was about the human spirit, the creativity, that unwavering belief in the city.
And that belief, it went beyond just wanting to go back to the way things were. They wanted to make San Francisco even better than before.
Right. It's about that drive to overcome adversity and actually use it as fuel to become even stronger.
So much of what happened back then, it feels so relevant to what we're facing today,
Oh, absolutely. Natural disasters, social upheaval, pandemics. The 1906 earthquake reminds us that even when things seem completely overwhelming, human ingenuity and compassion, they can actually prevail.
It gives me hope, honestly. It shows what we're capable of achieving when we work together.
It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's always a chance for renewal, for rebirth, for coming together to build something better. That's a message that's just as powerful today as it was over 100 years ago.
I love that. So as we continue to explore how San Francisco reinvented itself, I'm curious, what's been resonating with you the most so far? What parts of the story have really stood out?
And what lessons do you think we can take away from those who lived through such a pivotal moment in history? We'll come back to this question soon.
It's kind of wild to think that even before the earthquake, San Francisco already had these huge ambitions.
Oh, yeah, they definitely wanted to be a world-class city up there with New York and Paris.
And it's almost like the earthquake, as horrible as it was, gave them the chance to really go for it,
It's like they got this blank canvas, I guess you could say, a chance to start over and create something truly amazing.
And they did. I mean, look at the new city hall they built in the 1910s.
It's magnificent, isn't it? A real symbol of their pride and determination to come back stronger.
Totally. And then there was the Pan-Pacific International Exposition in 1915.
Oh, yeah, that was a huge deal. A World's Fair to show off their recovery and their vision for the future.
Less than a decade after the earthquake, they're hosting this massive global event.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. It really
Yeah.
shows just how resilient and determined they were.
Talk about a comeback story. And then in the 1920s, they really embraced the Art Deco style.
Yeah, it gave San Francisco this really unique and modern
It
skyline.
was like a city reborn,
Uh-huh.
embracing the future.
And, of course, you can't forget about the bridges.
The Golden Gate Bridge, the Bay Bridge.
Those are more than just bridges, they're icons.
They really are. They represent San Francisco's ambition and their ability to overcome any obstacle.
It's like they were saying, look at what we can do. We can connect entire land masses with these incredible structures.
And they did it with style. Those bridges are just beautiful to look at.
They are, and that spirit, that belief that they could achieve anything, that's the real legacy of the 1906 earthquake.
A legacy that's still felt today.
Absolutely. San Francisco is a city that constantly reinvents itself, embraces change, and never gives up.
And it all goes back to that spirit of resilience that was forged in the fires of 1906.
So the next time you're in San Francisco, take a moment to think about all that history, all the challenges they overcame.
Yeah, look for those little reminders of the past. The earthquake shacks, the ornate architecture of Chinatown, the soaring skyscrapers.
Those are all testaments to the city's indomitable spirit. And remember, those lessons aren't limited to San Francisco.
They apply to all of us.
Yeah, no matter what challenges you face, you have that same strength and resilience inside you.
The 1906 earthquake was a tragedy, no doubt, but it's also a story of hope and triumph.
It shows the incredible power of the human spirit.
The ability to not only survive, but to rebuild and create something even better than before.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that spirit of resilience alive in your own life.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, remember those lessons from San Francisco and let them inspire you to face any challenge that comes your way.